ago, the queen hatched the dragon from an egg, and it lived alongside the people. Eventually another dragon arrived in Astelia, and they started living together in the mountains. But after 50 years, the dragons became more hostile, and it was because they had a baby. Aoife wonders what happened to the babies, and they were said to have left the nest after they became adults. After another 50 years, the female dragon died of old age, and this was all 100 years ago. Aoife thinks the situation is different, since it should just be one male dragon, so it can't be about protecting their young. Seika decides it would be best to just go up the mountain to see for himself. Aoife thinks it's too risky, but Seika is confident he can get away if he needs. Later that night, Aoife comes to his room. She tells him that the prince was asking for her, and she doesn't know what to do. Seika tells her she doesn't have to go, and invites her to stay in his room for the night. He offers the bed to her, but she says it's plenty for the both of them. They get to bed, and Seika wonders what she thinks about the prince. He wonders if she has considered his offer, saying she doesn't need to worry about him. Aoife thinks he is trying to get rid of her, apologizing for the previous day once again. Seika says that's not what he meant, and Aoife wonders why he is bringing this up. He says it could be a good opportunity for her, and Aoife wonders how he would feel if she left him. He says he would feel lonely, but he would be able to accept it. Aoife says she will consider it, although we see her in tears. In the morning, Aoife is already gone, and Yuki suddenly appears. She feels bad for Aoife, reminding him of how Aoife is in love with him. Seika thinks they are just childhood friends, but Yuki can tell she has always loved him. Seika confronts the prince about his advancements toward Aoife. He wonders why the prince is so drawn to her, and the prince says that he finds both her looks and her intelligence to be attractive. He asks to buy Aoife once again, but Seika refuses. However, he says if Aoife is willing, he will not stand in their way. Seika goes on to tell the prince he is headed up the mountain to see the dragon. The prince knows that will take a few days, so he thinks it could be the perfect time to make a move. Seika says goodbye to Aoife, and he heads up to the mountain. As Aoife returns to her room, she is approached by Liz. Liz tells her about the land, and how it is abundant with mana. She reveals that she can see the spirits around Aoife, and suggests that Aoife must be the descendant of the elves. She tries to convince Aoife to join the harem, but she can only think about Seika. Liz wonders if she is content with being a slave, and knows that Aoife must be aware that Seika is a monster. Aoife is confused at what she means, and Liz mentions how the spirits around Seika seem to actively avoid him, much like how they would avoid demons. Aoife believes Seika is human, since they grew up together, but Liz points out that she doesn't know his mother, who could have been a demon. Aoife insists on believing in Seika, and Liz decides to show her around the harem. As Liz shows her around, the harem is not what you would expect. It's actually more like a school, training young women up to be the future leaders and officials of the kingdom. Liz mentions that the prince's mother is the current monarch, and she is beloved by all the people. The prince is worried about living up to her, so he is trying to prove himself, rushing to resolve their dragon problems, and finding himself a bride. Liz says that she has known him since he was born, and vouches that he is a good person, so she hopes that Aoife will stay by his side. Meanwhile, Seika makes it up the mountain and finds the dragon. The dragon immediately breathes fire at him, but Seika blocks it with his barrier. The dragon takes flight and dives at him, but Seika is able to teleport out of the way with his talisman. He opens a gate and summons one of his demons, which lets off an intense scream that brings the dragon to its knees. Seika proceeds to create a fireproof net and binds the dragon. Yuki wonders why he didn't start with the net, but Seika says he didn't want to hurt the dragon by binding it mid-flight. Seika heads over to the nest and finds that there is an egg. Yuki finds it strange, since the dragon should be a male, but Seika mentions that some creatures are able to change their gender and even reproduce on their own. He starts caring for the egg, and realizes that the legends about the royal family hatching a dragon were probably true. He starts heating the egg up, and thinks that the dragon was struggling to keep the egg warm. Since they know why the dragon became aggressive, Seika thinks it's time to head back, but the dragon insists on keeping him around. Meanwhile, Aoife is brought over to see the prince. He talks to a man named Gruid, who examines Aoife as a specimen. Factoring in her education and magic ability, he comes up with a price of what she is worth. The prince agrees with the price, and confirms with his subordinate. Aoife is confused at what they are talking about, and the prince takes out a huge bag of gold, telling her she is going to be freed. Aoife mentions that they would need Seika's permission, but the prince insists he is paying so much that Seika would not be able to refuse. He even suggests that he would abolish slavery to force Seika to sell her to him. Aoife tries to refuse, and the prince wonders why she would choose to be a slave, but Aoife says that even as a slave, she is able to choose what she does. The prince's subordinate comes back with the paperwork, saying they need Aoife's fingerprint. The prince becomes hesitant, but the man tells him that Aoife will eventually realize that this was for her own good. The prince has his guards restrain Aoife, and she prepares to defend herself, but Liz creates a barrier that blocks her magic. Using her magic, she cuts Aoife's finger and prepares to get her fingerprint, but at that moment, the dragon arrives, and the barrier is destroyed. Seika appears and apologizes for arriving in such a manner. He explains the situation with the dragon and says that he needs a fire user to help warm the egg. He sees Aoife and calls out for her help. Liz warns her not to go, but Aoife admits that she loves him, and the two fly away. When they reach the nest, they are suddenly attacked by the lava tiger. Seika stops it with his magic and calls out for Zekt to come out of hiding. Zekt and his men appear, and Seika realizes that they were using the prince to get to the dragon's egg. Seeing that Seika has seen through his plans, Zekt decides to get rid of him. He commands his tiger to attack, but it gets blown up by a geyser of water. Seika is surprised, and Aoife refuses to be scared like last time. The tiger attacks again, and Zekt sends his men to attack, but Seika uses his white inferno attack, unleashing an enormous blast of white flame that completely vaporizes the tiger. Zekt wonders who Seika is, and he just calls himself the world's strongest mage. The dragon approaches, and all of Zekt's men make a run for it, but Seika captures them all with his vines, and Aoife reduces his book to ashes. Seika praises Aoife, and is impressed that she has even learnt water magic, giving her a head pat. Seika reports to the prince, revealing that Zekt was deceiving him, and the prince has them all locked up. Seika continues to report about the reason that caused the dragon to become aggressive, and suggests that if the prince helps to hatch the egg, the dragon will once again see the people as its family, and protect the lands. But the prince is not happy with the solution, thinking that it will be seen as indecisive, and will fail to satisfy the imperial court. He asks Seika to slay the dragon, suggesting that since he is alone in the nest, he could poison the dragon. Seika can't believe what he is asking, and the prince says that he must do it to prove himself worthy to be the next king. Seika refuses, and the prince calls for his guards, saying that Seika is suspected of magically influencing the dragon. The prince goes on to tell Aoife that she is now free, and that Seika is dangerous, but Seika gets in the way, and starts to lose his temper, reprimanding the prince, and calling him a child, saying that he will never hand over Aoife to him. Seika worries that he might have gone too far, but Liz starts laughing, and tells the guards to stand down. She asks what Aoife thinks about everything, and Aoife once again refuses the prince's offer, saying she just wants to go back to the academy with Seika. Liz tells the prince that he should give up, and she offers her apologies to Seika, who also apologizes for losing his temper. She has a private chat with Aoife, and can see she is insistent on being with Seika. She takes her hand, and gives her some light spirits, which are quite rare, and can be used for healing. Aoife reminds her of an elven princess from the fairy tales, and she wishes her the best of luck. As they head back to the academy, Seika wonders what kind of guy she is into, and she describes him, saying someone that is smart, strong, kind, and a bit of a loner. Seika thinks she is too picky, thinking she may not be able to find such a guy, but Aoife thinks it won't be too hard. Elsewhere, we see a group of devils fighting against a bunch of monsters. The devils have impressive abilities and easily destroy the monsters. The devils surround a man, who is shocked they defeated his monster traps so easily. The boss asks the man to show the way, but the man doesn't trust him. Suddenly, the man's trump card appears, and using his eyes, the boss can see it's an elder cyclops. The boss decides to handle it himself. When the cyclops attacks him, he easily destroys the weapon. He charges at the cyclops, who fires a laser from its eye, but the boss blocks it and takes the cyclops out. The other demons are impressed. They end up finishing off the man, and it seems they are on a mission to find and kill the hero. Back at the academy, Seika tells Amu he wants her to meet his family. She is shocked, and Aoife accepts that he wants to be with Amu, but Seika clears things up, saying he is going back home during their break, and his father wanted to meet the mage that can use every element. Amu agrees, and Seika invites Mabel to come along as well. When he's alone with Yuki, we learn that he isn't keen on going home, but it seems there is someone else that wants to meet them. When they arrive, they are greeted by his older brother Luft. Seika introduces his friends, and Aoife's father Adis is glad to see his daughter. They are suddenly interrupted when Glai appears. Seika worries he is still angry taking his spot at the academy, but Glai almost thanks him and is glad that he joined the army instead. He still remembers being humiliated, so he demands to duel with Seika. Amu steps in to take him on, and Seika says he will duel him if he wins. Their fight begins, and Amu goes on the offensive. Glai slips, and Amu goes for the killing blow, but Glai chants a spell, which surprises her, and he disarms her in that instant. Amu complains he cheated with magic, but Glai says he didn't actually cast a spell. Glai demands to fight with Seika, but before they can, Princess Fiona suddenly appears. Glai is her knight, and she tells him he would lose the fight against Seika, so he calls off their fight. Seika is surprised to see him listening to someone, and Glai introduces Fiona as the Holy Princess, which is a shock to everyone. As they head inside, Yuki wonders what a Holy Princess is, and we learn that it's not an official title, but she was born from the Emperor and a priestess, so she has the blood of both. Amu wonders why the Holy Princess is here, but she tells them that she wanted to meet her. Seeing that she looks just like the hero from the legends, Fiona remembers a vision that her mother had. She tells them she is staying for a few days, and asks them to accompany her when she goes back to the capital. After she leaves, Amu gets sussed out at how Seika knew she would be here. We see Seika's father in his study, and he tells Adis to speak freely, asking if he is mad that he sent Aoife to the academy, but Adis is more upset that she is serving Seika, because he finds him creepy, but Seika's father says he has been doing well at the academy. They all have dinner together, and the princess strangely talks about being reincarnated, but Seika changes the topic. His father compliments him on his dragon investigation, and his mother tells him to write to them more often. Seika is surprised to hear this, because he has always been ignored by her his whole life. Back in his room, Amu comes to visit. She just wants to hang out, and she asks if he plans on continuing with further studies after he graduates, saying she is probably going to go back to being an adventurer. But Seika remembers the time they were stuck in the dungeon together, and he promised he would go adventuring with her, so he plans on becoming an adventurer as well. Amu is surprised he is taking his promise so seriously, but is glad they can stick together. The next day, Seika shows the princess around the town. Glai reminds him they left the other knights behind, so they need to keep the princess safe. The princess holds onto Seika's hand so she doesn't get lost, and they explore the market. They try out some of the food, but they start to stand out. As they pass by a construction site, there are logs that suddenly fall, but Glai uses his wind magic to destroy it, and Amu creates a golem to shield them. Seika thanks them for their help, but the princess gets mad at him for not doing anything. Seika ends up getting her a gift and helps her put it on. The princess isn't sure how she looks, but Seika uses magic to create a mirror for her. Glai thinks his magic is weird, but the princess is happy with the gift. Later that day, Seika finds Glai training hard, and he can see why the princess chose him to be her knight. But Glai says he wasn't chosen for his skills, but for a different reason, revealing that the princess has the ability to see the future. Seika wonders if it's true, but Glai says her mother was an oracle, who saw the prophecy of the hero and the demon king. Seika wonders why he is telling him all of this, but Glai warns him not to get in her way. The next day, the princess looks around for Seika, but using his talismans, he is able to avoid her. Yuki wonders how her ability to see the future works, saying it sounds like his divination skill, but Seika explains divination is limited, using information and tools to gain some insight, but her ability is completely different. As Alma walks by, Seika surprises her from the bush. She just lost to Glai again, and Seika finds this strange, since she should be stronger than him. She mentions that the princess looks lonely playing chess by herself, so Seika joins her. It seems there is no one willing to challenge her, so she asks if he knows how to play. Seika says he is just a beginner, so the princess gives him a handicap, leaving only her pawns. Seika thinks it will be one